This is Open Line on the VOCM CFCB radio network and Big Land Labradors FM. The opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily those of this station.
Open Line is brought to you by McDonald's.
And now your host, Patty Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. It's Friday, January the 16th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Patty Daly. Ryan Critch, she's right there, producing the show. All right, so it's come on with a Friday. You know what to do. And, of course, once again, apologies for the raspy and pretty rough voice. Hopefully it lasts throughout the program, but you can help in that regard. By calling the program, okay, where are we going to start today? Man, oh man, there's some great stuff going on. First off, we hear on the monitors that there's no ambulances available. You know, every now and then we suffer what I believe they refer to as a red alert, where there are people calling for ambulatory services just to find out that there isn't one available. And this particular circumstance is now happening in the city of St. John's. I mentioned that off the top for the obvious reasons, but also it does indeed once again highlight the fact that we have a extremely disgruntled, stressed out, anxious group of ambulance workers and paramedics who are working without a contract. Many have uprooted and left the province. It's an ongoing issue. So while the Premier and Deputy Premier, Minister of Health Community Services, Steve Kent, hosted a health summit the other day, which I think by all accounts went very well. People who were in attendance were pleased with the opportunity to provide that type of feedback in that setting, the consultation process that it is. So if you were in attendance or you'd like to comment on it, of course, that's grand. But, boy, to know that we may indeed have and be facing and maybe currently dealing with a distinct shortage in paramedics in the province. Whoa. Okay, so, yeah, all right. House of Assembly reopening next week. So says Premier Davis, who was on the morning show here on VOCM this morning with Fred Hutton. And, I mean, of course, it goes without saying, Fred and Brian Claudette do a great job. And Fred teeing us up with these types of guests and getting comments from Premier Davis this morning, in particular dealing with the seat reduction issue, really helps drive the bus. And we think that's great stuff. Okay, so oil's trading at $49.81 when I last checked a few minutes ago. And that is indeed the effect that slumping price has on the province and the Treasury is probably the biggest thing we're dealing with. But, oh, look, there's a squirrel. Yesterday's announcement by the Premier regarding the plan to reduce the number of seats in the House of Assembly from 48 to 38 really did take away a lot of the focus and conversation from other issues, and it was a hot-button topic, to be sure, yesterday, and will continue to be so as we figure out the process, the timing, the motivation, yes, absolutely the motivation, and what it really means to you and I to have the seats reduced. Think of it out loud. First comment, what I thought was an excellent one yesterday, made by my pal Dave Cochran. He tweets out, if we have too many members of the House of Assembly, how and why is it that we have an unelected minister in the form of Judy Madden? It's a good question. If we have too many MHAs, why do we have an unelected member of the government and sitting in the cabinet? Of course, Miss Manning. Good question. If you ask yourself out loud, do I feel, in every pocket of the province, do I feel like I am overrepresented in the House of Assembly? Do I feel like there are so many people there that we are just watching them twiddle their thumbs and my concerns and questions are being addressed so promptly that of course we have too many? I'd be surprised if any of you reacting to that question in that form would say, oh yes, we're absolutely overrepresented. But yet, and I can't back it up with empirical data and or polling results, but given what I do for a living, the conversations I have on air and in private, and things that I read, people, I believe, are very supportive of reducing the number of seats and consequently the number of politicians that we pay pretty well and with their so-called gold-plated pension. So I think people are behind this as the electorate. And if you're not, feel free to call the show and let me know why. I think it's a mistake to cut the number of seats. Right off the bat, so regardless of the politics, the timing, the process, the gerrymandering, we'll get to that in a second. That's the best one of the day yesterday, gerrymandering. I think we are reacting knee-jerk, and there is some perception in my mind governing by polls to make this particular move. Now, for Premier Davis, he has some safe spots of sanctuary, given the fact that when asked in the past, Miss Michael, leader of the NDP currently, was not opposed to reducing the number of seats. The leader of the Liberals, the official opposition, the government in waiting, Dwight Ball, he's on record proposing cutting the number of seats by 8. Fundamentally, I think they're all wrong. I know why you think we're better served by reducing the number and to get 10 people away from the so-called trough. But there's a few things that have happened, and these are well documented, the result of reducing the number of seats in the legislature. So let's look at 38. Immediately, we have more power in the hands of fewer. Now, all the while you think we've got too many and they're up against the trough and it's just, they're in there twiddling their thumbs. But we have more power in the hands of fewer. True reform inside the House of Assembly would better define the roles of MHAs, put processes in place that absolutely better represent the voices of the constituents, whether that be in the form of all-party committees, enhanced oversight, enhanced transparency, a la the Bill 29 and the remedies required for there. But reducing the number of seats really doesn't accomplish any of that. Just think of the concept that we all think is prudent is the approach of the all-party committee. You have a government of 38 members, remove 1 for the Speaker, 37. You have a cabinet set up, and even if they trim the cabinet down to the bare bones, what's an appropriate number? I don't know, 15, whatever. How can we even possibly appropriately implement an all-party committee with so few members available outside of the positions of cabinet ministers? How can we think that more oversight can be offered by putting the power in the hands of fewer? I just really don't understand it. People also will say that reducing the number of seats will improve the quality of candidates coming forward. And why is that? We have the same pool, population-wise, of people who may or may not be interested in running. If you have picked the best 38 currently of the number of the 48 sitting members now, do you think that all of a sudden that represents a far better quality, so to speak, candidate representing you and I and consequently the entire province once they sit in the House of Assembly? I don't think so. I really don't think so. A smaller number of seats available to the electorate also absolutely greatly enhances the opportunity for large sweeps. Large-scale majority victories, potential for sweeps. Look at where we are now, given how high the Liberals are riding in the polls. If we were going to the electorate now to fill 38 seats, the opportunity for them to have a resounding majority, an overwhelming majority, the potential to take 36, 7, or 8 of those seats is very, very real. How does that serve either one of us appropriately? How does that put more democracy in play? How is that a better representation of your needs and wants, your access to your member of the House of Assembly? I'm not so sure it does. Anyway, moving on to the realities that we are going to have this conversation. The immediate negative reactions to Premier Davis is interesting. The Liberals are on side. Mr. Ball is documented once again on record yesterday. He supports cutting the number of seats in the House of Assembly. When Premier Davis says that the driving force will be the financial savings, the number is real. The number he's been using is $2.5 million per year. When you match that against the current deficits, the needs, the wants, the cuts that are going to be required to manage and to hopefully approach balancing a budget in the upcoming year, $2.5 million is a drop in the bucket. If it's even qualifies as a drop in the bucket. So the savings are paltry. Mr. Ball says that he's also on side with saving money wherever possible. It's a good overriding thought, but can and should it start inside the House of Assembly? Will they be willing to suffer cuts to their political staff? I'm guessing no. So right off the bat, there's that. And then the timing will indeed be the number one question of concern for many and those who are reacting negatively towards this decision. Even though many of you, the day prior, were thinking that a reduction in number of seats was the right thing to do. But now all of a sudden that's announced, you're not into it anymore. The timing. Okay. Can the process indeed take place in the 90 days put forward by the Premier? people will quickly refer back to 1996, where it took 9 months from beginning to end to have this done. Now, keep in mind, we have a similar amount of time available to us now. I'm not so sure why the process cannot be done correctly and appropriately in this time frame. In 1996, were there deadlines, milestones, goalposts to be hit by the Commission and Elections Newfoundland and Labrador when it came to the consultation process, the due diligence, the redrawing of the districts, having people in the province in the know as to what district they're in, whatever the name of it may be, who the candidates will be inside it? I think maybe so. Is it anti-democratic? You're also telling me that the democratic process that no one was too concerned with in 1996 and 10 years prior was anti-democratic, but all of a sudden it is now. And why is that sentiment? The sentiment is because many people think that the Tories have gone long in the tooth. You want them out of the office. You want an election called sooner than later. And you think that this is simply a ploy to keep them in office, and guaranteed there's politics at play. We'll talk about that too in a second. If this process cannot be satisfied appropriately inside the time frame, and the government sees fit to push the next general election into the spring of 16, that will not be well received by many of you, and it won't be by me either. Because then that will be clear abuse of this type of process to extend life in office. And I understand that. But if we can have an election in November, then I'm still not sure that this is going to be an unmanageable process. The politics of it, you're saying that this is gerrymandering, which I think is an interesting term, yesterday used by many, and I'm not so sure the vast majority of us knew anything about gerrymandering until the last week or so, where this conversation popped up. The concept of gerrymandering is that for political gain, the party in power will redraw boundaries to enhance their opportunity to win more political seats, consequently better their opportunity to hold a seat of government. Is that in play here? All three leaders have indeed indicated they're in support of reducing the number of seats. The Chief Justice will appoint the head of the Commission to deal with this issue. Then indeed the Speaker, who is a PC member, will appoint 4 other members to deal with it. The House of Assembly is the body that deals with the numbers of seats. The Commission will deal with the redrawing of the boundary. So how much political influence can be exerted on this front? It's a fair question and one we should discuss. But does that mean that if indeed we waited till the general election and allow the Liberals, if indeed they win, which they probably will, if the Liberals win, then all of a sudden, if they undertake the process, then it is not partisan, it is not political, it's completely democratic because of what? The process is not going to change. I think it's flawed in the first place. I don't think we should cut any seats. But some of the reaction to it... Now, you want to talk about any of it, please do. The politics. One thing for sure. This is screaming from the mountaintops by the Tories, we're not dead yet. Just watch. Whether or not you accept it, you like it, you loathe it, you think there's a political price to pay, fair. This time last week, the political price to pay for the Tories in the upcoming election was to potentially get shut out. You can't get more shut out than shut out. The potential was for this to be viewed as nothing but an act of desperation. Yeah, because they're desperate. What it does do is puts the Liberals in a very difficult spot. And that's maybe unfair in many people's mind. It will fly in the face of what's in the best interest of the people. It will put the political fortunes of the Premier and his party in front of our best interests. They're all playing politics. This just so happens to be a very effective tool. Liberal strife will be the number one result of this politically. They have many people already gone through the nomination process and ready to go. They're going to have to review some of that. Mr. Ball was quick, and people on his behalf were quick to condemn the Premier when he floated the idea of cutting seats by saying, hey, that's my idea. And now you have to wear it. So it's a tricky order of business. And I'm not so sure any of it makes a lot of sense. But I think some of the condemnation flowing that way is a bit ridiculous. The dissension in the ranks inside the Liberals in particular has already started. Yesterday, hardcore Liberal supporters were very quick to turn on an idea brought forward already by their leader, committed to by their party, and now all of a sudden it's a bad idea. is very interesting. There's going to be some in-house Liberal fights when the boundaries are redrawn that will be to the benefit of the Tories. Now, we may not show on a piece of paper so far as the number of seats won in the next general election, which kind of removes the gerrymandering foolishness. The Liberals and the Tories both think that reducing the number of seats is the appropriate maneuver. Miss Michael has never been opposed to it. So the gerrymandering, whatever. Miss Michael says she'll filibuster because of the anti-democratic process. What about this is anti-democratic? Secondly, slash 10 seats. What about Labrador? People will say there's no opportunity to, you cannot remove any of the seats from Labrador, which is currently 4. They have a unique culture. They have, the big land does indeed represent a different kettle of fish than does the island. I don't think you can remove any of the 4 seats up there. It would be political suicide, and plus I don't think it adequately reflects the need of representation in the big land. But yet some of you want seats removed. It's fascinating politics, and it's fascinating fundamental approach to democracy and our setup. If you want to make things better, less people doesn't do it. If you want to make things better, less people with less pay with a worse pension does not accommodate what your overriding goal is, or at least should be, is quality representation inside the House of Assembly. You want to talk about it? I think it's brilliant. And the filibuster, I mean, come on. Anyway, you want to talk about it? Good stuff. Okay, obviously a big story yesterday around the province and around the country was that the giant retailer, Target, with an ill-fated attempt to crack the Canadian market, they're pulling up shop and they're closing their doors. Some 17,000 jobs. This is a way bigger story than reducing the number of seats, as a matter of fact. 17,000 jobs, including 2 stores fully staffed here in this province. It's a huge problem. Those jobs at that magnitude are virtually impossible to replace. So while some of you in Central are saying, well, it doesn't affect me because there's no Target in my neighborhood, that's so short-sighted that it's hard to give much credence to. Because losing massive numbers of jobs affects every single person, regardless if you can throw a stone at the Target store in your neighborhood. So I think it's a big deal. And 16-week severance is all right, but finding them a job in what will be potential extended downturn in commodities, and consequently, the economy very likely will be adversely affected. It's a big story. I think it's important. You want to talk about it? Great. A couple more quickies. So, Ministers King and Hutchings are up in Ottawa, kicking up a storm, visiting European embassies to get them on side with how Harper has not played fair, played honest, done the right thing, owned up to his side of the bargain when it comes to negotiating the removal of the NPRs. Whether or not it's an effective tool remains to be seen, but it is bold, and it's as bold as this seat reduction plan as brought forward by Premier Davis. I think it's ill-fated, but I think it's slick politics. And I think they're playing slick politics up along, too. This can indeed be easily construed as fighting the boogeyman. You're looking for a bump in the polls, you take on Ottawa. But yet, everyone here is quick to say that Harper screwed us. So once again, we're reacting. Many people are looking at issues now, and the dislike or the detest aimed at the Tories means we are just assessing things on those political bases and those alone. Not exactly the merits of the fight, the merit of the policy, the pros and cons of any position put forward. We don't do that. I think we should. Lana Payne brings up a great point yesterday when she talks about, she's the Atlantic Director for Unifor, one of the largest union bodies in the country. There's been a ruling by a federal judge that says the oil companies do not have to disclose to the public safety-related incidents in the offshore. This is pathetically ridiculous. Ms. Payne makes the absolute bang-on summary point. If you are willing to go to a federal judge to ensure those documents, records are kept from public view, what are you hiding? Safety offshore should not be just an order of business. Safety offshore should be something we all have the ability to understand, to absorb the records, and to be able to lobby for enhanced safety oversight offshore, to protect the men and women we have working out on the rigs, and the transportation to and from, and of course the environmental sensitivities that come with some environmental or some safety issues offshore. So Ms. Payne is right. What are you hiding? Imagine going to a federal judge to hide safety issues. What's your problem? Anyway, what else we got here? That's probably enough. Do we get any calls yet, Ryan? I haven't been looking at the screen. Let's get a few more calls going. I'm sure that there's people that would like to rip a strip off of the Premier today, and I totally get it. And you may think that I'm nuts to think that reducing seats is a poor idea. But the more we have a conversation about it, what it actually means to you and I, shag the politics of it, which I think is brilliant, that's going to be how we get down to actually having some influence over our political party leaders who are all very quickly, and forget gerrymandering, they're pandering to people thinking that reduced number of seats is actually a good play. We're on Twitter, we're VOCM Open Line, follow us there. We're taking your emails, openline@vocm.com, and whatever you want to talk about, from Muskrat Falls down to the education system, healthcare, the quality of the roads, snow clearing, ambulatory services, rock and roll, hockey, it's up to you. We're taking a very quick break and then we're coming back. Welcome back to the show. Let's begin on line number 1. Good morning, Brad. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty, and Happy New Year to you. Haven't talked to you since.
Right, and Happy New Year to you. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind is the reduction of seats in the House of Assembly.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't, it's so infuriating, a person just doesn't really know how to react, how to use the proper words to describe it, here we are, we have a government that's basically lost the faith of the people, and, they're trying to eliminate 10 seats before an election. It just smacks of an arrogance that it really is the reason why they are as low as they are in the polls. Specifically,
what's the problem with the number of seats being reduced or proposed?
Well, I'll give you an example, Patty. Davis was on TV yesterday saying that it would all the issues would be decided by an independent body and so forth, right? Well, then he subsequently comes on and says, well, but there will be 38 seats.
But the role of the House of Assembly is to determine the number of the seats, so the Commission and Elections Newfoundland will be charged with redrawing boundaries.
Well, the point of the matter is, if it's an independent board, it should be that the board that's determining whether or not there should be a seat reduction, how many seats that should be reduced, and the boundaries, that encompasses. It shouldn't be left to the politicians to say, well, we're going to wipe out, 20% or 25% of the seats before an election so that we can, somehow minimize the damage to ourselves politically.
Well,
this is just scandalous, really.
Well, let's just paint this picture and you can react to it. So we wait for the general election to come and go. We have 48 members elected to the House of Assembly. The newly formed Liberal government would put together their plan, which they've already said they're on record as saying they would do, and to plot the reduction number of seats. Their number that they've been using is 8. That's what Mr. Ball has been saying. So at that point, how does anything change other than the messenger of who holds the press conference? The process would remain the same. So what difference does it make now that it's Davis as opposed to if we waited a year from now and it was Ball?
Well, there's a few things. The first thing is trust. Most people don't trust the government anymore. And to put that faith in the government to reduce 10 seats from the House of Assembly where we're supposed to be represented, they don't have the moral authority to govern anymore. And so the people don't trust them, and therefore they should not be overseeing or putting forward a process to eliminate seats in the House of Assembly. That'd be the first thing. The second thing is that gives waiting till after an election gives an appropriate amount of time for a board to go through all the complex issues that are involved in this sort of thing. And then once the board has finished its work, the legislation is passed in the House of Assembly, then the individual constituency associations of each party, the district associations, have to say, okay, well, we have to reorganize every single association.
Irrelevant. That's irrelevant. That part is completely irrelevant. That's the politics of politics. Yeah, absolutely it is. The problems faced by district association offices representing all three parties should be the absolute least of our worries.
Well, normally that would be the case, Patty. Normally. However, when you're proposing to run this through prior to an election, which by law you have to have in the fall, you leave these district associations at a terrible disadvantage to get organized to actually conduct an election.
Which would affect all three parties exactly the same, and that is the epitome and definition of fairness. Well, if not, if what you're saying is true, though, Brad, If what you're saying is true, just 1 second though, if we are giving the Liberals credit for being better organised than any time in recent history, which I think is true, then this would hurt the Tories and the NDP far more than the Liberals. So I think we're trying to associate political gain with the Tories when in fact, if what you say is true, this hurts them more than it does others.
Not necessarily. The Tories are funded far better than the other parties.
How so? They are funded by who?
Well, they have a larger bank account. Their party does. They have more money in the bank than the Liberals do, and certainly far more than the NDP do.
Hasn't served them very well in the last 7 by-elections.
So they are capable to respond quickly and professionally to a reorganization, whereas the NDP probably have no chance, and the Liberals have some chance, but not as good of a chance. The point of the matter is, Patty, why would you attempt to reduce the House of Assembly seats by 10 seats, 20 to 25% of the seats in the House of Assembly before an election? I mean, within a 9-month period, why would you try and ram that through? What's the point? I mean, we have oil crashing. We're going to lose $1.5 billion minimum, likely, out of our revenue this coming year, this budget year. Why are these guys consumed with issues like this instead of the issue that's really important, which is how are we going to defend ourselves and our way of life here and our economy with these sort of implications of loss of revenue? Why are we focusing on some issue of reducing 10 seats suddenly 6 to 9 months before an election? That's the question.
Once again, but that's simply the politics of it, not the integrity of a democratic institution, right? I mean, and the reduction of seats, all 3 parties would only be able to run in the 48 or 38, whatever's available in the upcoming election. So when people refer to the process as being anti-democratic, the process may be fast-tracked, but I don't know why we're going to have to be hamstrung by a 9-month process from 1996. You know, who's to say that the timing...
The 1996 issue is kind of irrelevant.
So why? I think it's completely irrelevant.
But if you look at it logically, okay, you're looking at logically at least a 4 to 6 month period for a bureaucracy to redo the seats.
Why?
For sure.
Why?
Because they have to study individually the boundaries. They have to make adjustments. They have to, that's a process. It's never a fast process. And then, as I said before, there is the political parties have to become established. They have to be able to react prior to an election. After election, it doesn't matter. They've all got 4 years to reorganize themselves
if I hear it correctly,
represent the people properly.
But if it's fair for all, then it really does take some of the anti-democratic sting out of comments coming from some, doesn't it? I mean, they will all have to react exactly the same way. Nobody will know what the redraft or redrawing of boundaries will include until it's done. So I don't know who has a leg up. And plus, of the political parties, while this process is ongoing, I don't think any party and or political watcher or citizen is going to be completely caught off guard and blown away that their small town is now in this district that was next door all the while anyway. Like a couple of people yesterday were telling me that it cannot be done in this time frame. It simply cannot be done. But by the time I went to bed last night, they had it done. They had it done in their minds what they thought, attention to geography and region and pockets of economy and peninsulas and islands and the Labrador issue and everything else. It could not be done earlier in the day until when I went to bed, they had it all redrafted in their head. And I bet you that this one person in particular, his redrawing of the boundaries and consequent seat projections, if you match what he came up with yesterday in the matter of 1 day to what the Commission and Elections Newfoundland and Labrador will come up with at the end of this process, I'm willing to bet there won't be any stark differences in it, because it cannot be as complicated as we're pretending it is.
Well, it is, because first of all, you have to have public meetings. You have to have public consultations. You can't just go simply wipe the slate clean and that's it. There's a process that has to be followed.
Yeah.
There's a bureaucracy involved. And that always takes time. It just does. And, it doesn't matter what government it is or what level of government it is. That's the fact.
Fair point.
And secondly,
okay, last point, because I have to go.
Okay, that's fine. But the question you really want to ask, other than the fact that we're focusing on this bogus issue when we could be focusing on, should be focusing on oil reduction, the revenues and loss of revenues in oil production, the real question is okay, this has to be done in 2016 by law. So why are these guys trying to push it through right before an election?
A couple of things. Because they can. Secondly, they think it's presents a political advantage so far as it puts the Liberals on the back foot. And when you have, we're referring to Dave as very much like lame duck, right? I mean, that's how the perception is out there. He does have an available opportunity to do the things that he thinks are the right things to do. And the funny thing about this one is there has been no political opposition to this position until yesterday, and the reaction is a negative one regarding process and timelines. And I think we have allowed the wheels of bureaucracy to grind so slowly for so long, and we are mad at it when that takes place on a normal occasion. But on this one, we're willing to allow for the so-called slow grinding wheels of the bureaucracy to take their time, do what they see fit, and not have any consequence or deadline or milestones, goalposts to hit. And I just think look, I understand your point. I don't think we should cut seats in the first place, to be honest with you. So the process, I don't know why we can't get this done. And I know it's going to be fast-tracked, but does that compressed timeline mean that it's been rushed to the point where we're going to blow it? I don't know. And the politics of it? How is the politics of it any different if Ball or Miss Michael or Premier Davis brings forward this process and recommends a number of seats? People say, who advised Davis on 10? Well, I don't know. Who advised Ball on 8? It's a number they use that they think best reflects their party's policy and position on the reduction number of seats. No more, no less. I
would just say the difference, just quickly, I would just say that the difference, Patty, there between those three leaders is that one of those leaders represents a discredited and distrusted government. The other two leaders have yet to have their chance to earn that reputation. But the one that's in there now has that reputation. And I would say that's the difference.
And it's a fair point to make. I appreciate your time this morning, Brad. Stay in touch.
Right on, Patty.
All the best. Bye-bye. Let's see. Twitter, kaboom! VOCM Open Line follows there. We're also taking emails and loving it, openline at VOCM.com. Please do indeed be a first-time caller. You know you have an opinion about this particular seat reduction issue and others that are of key focus and importance. Let's have those conversations here on the program this morning. We're taking a break and then we're coming back. Welcome back to the program. Repeat performance coming up here on line number 10 this morning. Let's hear what we have coming from the Liberal Member of Parliament representing the folks of, I think it's still called Humber St. Barb Bay Vert, but now soon to be known as the Long Range Mountains. Jerry Byrne. Good morning, Mr. Byrne. You're on the air.
Thanks for having me on the show, Patty. And yes, it is. It's Humber St. Barb Bay Vert.
Yeah, I thought so.
It will change to Long Range Mountains after what was a 3-year electoral reform district reformation process. And
whoever we have to give 3 years to come up with that beautiful name, we applaud and condemn them.
I think it is beautiful. It is poetic. Listen, thanks for having me on the show again. I want to offer a perspective because that may be valuable or at least entertaining. I don't know what, but 19 years of sitting in the national parliament in the House of Commons does allow me some perspective, I guess, on the whole issue of constituency redistribution and the number of MHAs within the Legislative Assembly.
Let's start right off the top with, do you agree in the concept that there needs to be a reduction in the number of seats?
Yeah, I think listen, nobody wants to be the status quo candidate or advocate. We are facing some population decline. We're facing economic realities. Are we overgoverned? I'm certainly prepared to say, yeah, we probably are. But here's the perspective that I'd offer. I sat in on the formation of the new territory of Nunavut. And I'll just very quickly, because this is not my main point. When the new territory of Nunavut was created, which has a population of 30,000 people, it was chosen that their legislative assembly would be 21 members. Because after very, very learned opinion of, experts that really understand democracy, representative democracy and electoral politics and process, there was a decision that there is a floor to this. If you have too few members in a multi-party system that allows for independence as well, there is a certain floor to the number of legislators that you can have and still have a functioning assembly. And the decision in the territory of Nunavut with 30,000 people and having an assembly of 21 representatives, that floor came into being. And in Nunavut, they do not have a political party system. So That's the only thing that I'll add in terms of that particular issue is that there is value to determining whether or not there is some sort of functional floor to whether, to a legislative assembly as to whether or not it can actually perform its priority function of representative democracy with a certain number. And that is something maybe the Electoral Commission or the Boundary Commission could actually provide with the help of some expert opinion. And you know what? I don't want to really go much beyond that.
Okay.
Unless you want, listen, this is a dialogue. This is not a monologue.
I can accept that point. And you're right. Getting any further into that specific might be getting a little bit too in depth. The process that is proposed here by the Premier. Now, many will say that it's anti-democratic because they are sick of the Tories. The process, I don't think, would change under the direction of a Liberal government under Mr. Ball. I don't think it would. I don't know why there'd be any reason to think differently. Do you think people can indeed have faith in the neutrality, the independent feature of this committee, regardless of who the Premier is of the day that brings it forward? Because I don't think we're going to change how we do this. Nomination of a chair by the Chief Justice, the Speaker will appoint 4 people. We immediately, out of hand, dismiss the potential for independent voices of free thinkers to be these 4 people. But I think we betray ourselves on that front somewhat. Your opinion on that?
Patty, process is important. It shouldn't always be the handcuff that prevents, effective good decision making when immediate decisions need to be taken, when leadership needs to be shown. But process is important. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. We're going to be looking over each other's shoulders in a condensed, very, very intense process. Premier Davis has said that this is going to be based, no element of geography to this whatsoever. This is going to be based on representative representation based on population. What he has already announced is that Labrador will lose probably 1, if not 2 seats, if you base it strictly on that premise. I have a tough time with that. Labrador is a growth center. It is feeling alienated already. So if you really, just in terms of process, to be able to say, to say to the people of Labrador, you have a fair and equal opportunity to actually make your case known, to prepare your case, and then vocalize your case, and to have the rest of the province understand that case as well, I think is important, because I'm not very comfortable with alienating a very, very major, very important part of our province, which has already felt very justifiably alienated in the past.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, just let me finish that. If Labrador gets its 4 seats and maintains its 4 seats, and Grand Falls-Windsor loses a seat, that Conception Bay South doesn't get the representation that they feel they deserve based on population, then you have shifty eyes in the other direction. We're losing out for someone else. And so, you have this at a time when our province needs to be united. We are, from what we're led to believe, we're going into the greatest economic darkness of our recent history that may be comparable to, and this is rhetoric, it's an exaggeration, but we lost our government back in 1933, in the Commission of Government. We're leading into this. This is all being driven by the finances of the province, that we're doing this simply because we are in an economic chaos collapse. If we do this in this condensed environment, we're going to be looking over each other's shoulders. Northeast Avalon will be wondering whether or not they're shortchanged. If they don't they may get more representatives proportionally, but less number. The rest of the province may be looking with shifty eyes saying, how come we have to pay a price? We have tough geography. How come Labrador is now looking at the mainland of Newfoundland and Labrador? Labrador is now looking at the island of Newfoundland and Labrador with shifty eyes saying, we didn't get a fair crack at having our say in all of this. We're paying a price, or vice versa.
But that won't be a political issue. That will not be a political issue until people determine in their minds they want to make it that and nothing but. We will have a commission. We'll have a commission that does that work. It won't be up to Mr. Ball, Miss Michael, Mr. McCurdy, Premier Davis, or nobody inside of their caucuses. None of them will have the ability to redraw the boundaries. So consequently, that consultation process, I think we can determine what people, I think process is important. I think consultation on this one is important. But I think we can already determine in some pretty good accuracy what will be a decent way to go if 38's the number. And that can take into consideration the islands and peninsulas and the Labrador concerns and features of geography, population base. I think we can do this. And it might not be the right timing, and it might reek of arrogance, and it might reek of fast track, but I don't think that we can pretend that there's going to be some sort of long-drawn process where people can wrap their minds around the concerns of those in different pockets of the province. I just don't. I don't know why we all do.
Well, if process is not important, which it is, we both agree that.
Sure it is.
The current administration just created a brand new executive position, a cabinet position with all the perks and all the, the expenses that go with it, called democratic engagement or public engagement. If that portfolio is important to have public engagement, shouldn't something like your representation in the democracy that governs you, isn't that part of that sort of that narrative? That's if this is something that we have a process in place, scheduled to begin in 2016. We can have broad terms of reference to this thing never drags on. It's never dragged on for more than 9 months. So let's get this clear. This is not a 3-year. This is not a 10-year process. This is not some royal commission that sits on a shelf forever. This is a process which will have a start date. It will have an end date, and it will allow a reasonable amount of study and consultation in the process. If we have a portfolio of public engagement, for God's sake, that does recognize the fact that this is important, and so, none of us are agents of the status quo,
no.
But I recognize that this is the ultimate bait and switch. Because at a time when we should really be talking about this is all going to go down during the course of the budget, when the budget is delivered, and instead of actually talking about how do we deliver healthcare better, how do we deliver education better, how do we provide public services a little better, you know what you and I are going to be talking about, and a lot of your callers are going to be talking about?
What's that?
It's the bait and switch. It's this electoral reform. We'll be right in the middle of a very, very condensed process of consultations on riding or boundary or district redistribution, and that's really. And you know what? I kind of think, in my devious heart, that is the intent. The bait and switch is there, and I've seen it. I've been a student of Stephen Harper for 19 years.
Yeah, but that's unfair, though.
It's politics.
But it's unfair to, that's the name drop stuff I think we can do without, Jerry.
Okay, fair.
We don't trust Stephen Harper, so we can't trust Paul Davis, who's actually currently fighting with Stephen Harper in public.
Yep.
So that doesn't mean that Stephen Harper is all of a sudden manifests himself inside someone who's not a Liberal or an NDP person in Newfoundland and Labrador. I think we can do without that stuff.
Okay, fair game. I agree with you. I've seen a government which has done that for a while, whether it be actually not accepting the fixed election date law, whether it be, prorogation to prevent collapse of his government. There are tactics that have been used, and I think that we have to be very, very mindful of those tactics because, for God's sake, as members of the Commonwealth, we can't sometimes evict members of the Commonwealth for undemocratic processes.
That's true.
So it does matter, and I got a feeling when you think of this, that to spring this on literally just months before a provincial general election, to just totally revise this when there is a process that has a finite start date, a finite end date, and that it can be done. If we're that bad off economically, please, for God's sake, Premier Davis, tell us.
Well,
we're in serious trouble.
I think we're going to get a clear picture of that in the upcoming budget. And I will say this because I'm speaking to a long-standing member of the Liberal Party. Nobody, I don't think, I can only speak for myself. I am not in a position, nor am I willing to even entertain the fact that all of a sudden everything that a conservative, progressive or otherwise does flies in the face of the purist-driven, snow, politically ambiguous Liberal Party or NDP. I mean, I don't think anyone should consider that would be the overarching theme here, that only one party in this country is playing anything, any form of politics, and everyone else are baby lambs.
No,
I mean, that's just not true.
I disagree with you in one iota.
Not true.
Listen,
I gotta go though, Jerry. I'll let you wrap it up quick.
There will be, I think, in the House, on the floor of the House Assembly, you'll probably see some consensus among political parties to be able to provide some insight. So you'll see that bipartisan, that, you know, that there's a time for the greater good.
Yeah.
This is the time for the greater good.
And let's hope it's achieved. And there's lots of checks and balances. We can play an active role. Jerry, appreciate the time and the conversation.
Thanks. I really, really appreciate the time as well.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Liberal Member of Parliament, Jerry Byrne. Let's go ahead and diversify not only the economy, but some of the voices that like to chime in here on the program today. Please do indeed me the favor, Ryan the favor, the listeners the favor, of picking up the phone and sharing your opinion, your perspective on anything. Doesn't mean a seat reduction. I don't care what we talk about. It's up to you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. And so many people across the province have indeed been keeping an eye on what continues to be a problem environmentally, and that's the Manolo Cell leaking oil, the standoff between the provincial and the federal government as to who is actually going to take care of this. Right now, the onus is on the federal government, and of course, they have done little more than apply Band-Aids in the form of whatever they call those black Bart stickers they're putting on the hull of the Manolo Cell. There's a meeting coming up, and to give us the details on line number 4. Good morning, Eugene. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning to you, sir.
Well, that was wonderful. You got that explained good.
Well, I mean, I've thought about and talked about a lot.
Yes, you have. And Paddy, thank you for taking my call. Yes, we do have a major demonstration, or we hope it's going to be a major demonstration and protest in Tunnegate and in Ottawa, and I'll give you the info. In Tunnegate, it's going to be beginning at the north side rest spot. It's going to be in the Tunnegate Adventure Tour area, proceed towards the St. Peter's Anglican Cemetery, and it's going to end up by the Tunnegate Museum. And in Ottawa, it's going to be a skate or a walk at the 5th Avenue entrance at the Ritz Canal restaurant, and they'll be on that information, plus they'll have a banner. Both of these are to celebrate celebrate is the right word, it's the 30th anniversary of the sinking. And it's a disaster, Paddy. And we have an online petition on the go before Parliament, and it's promoting worldwide to environment and wildlife groups with a goal of 30,000 names, and right now we have 29,000. And if anyone wanted to sign that petition, you can go online at the Manolo Cell Spill Cleanup. And there's also going to be a story tonight on the National about this, Paddy, so if anyone wants to see that, I'm sure that's going to be interesting. What was you going to say? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask this question. You know, we don't have to do all the government's work for them, but sometimes to be able to make our point appropriately and with as much force as required, has anybody involved in the cleanup this potential disaster waiting to happen, with some numbers that can be associated with the potential for and the risks associated with draining it in total or floating the Manolo Cell and the costs associated with it? Has anyone ever gone down that road so we have something to sink our teeth into? Because I think that would be important and extremely powerful if someone was able to say, hey, having discussed with ex-professional and or expert in the field, here's what they say and here's the cost that they associate with procedure X, Y, and Z.
No, our group haven't, Paddy, but that would be a place for the government. I mean, that should have been done by now to get this one on the cost of the cleanup. And you know, yes, it should have been done, but it's not being done. And you know, Paddy, I'm going to say this, and this is from me and not the committee. I do believe if this mess was at Quiddy Biddy Gut, it would have been cleaned up.
Why? If it's a federal government issue, why would the federal government be more attentive to Quiddy Biddy Gut than they will to St. John's?
Okay, that's a good question. That's just my opinion, Paddy, for what it's worth. I do believe it would have been cleaned up.
But is that a Townie versus Bayman thing? And do you think the federal government plays Townie versus Bayman, or is that something we just do here?
I'm just telling you my opinion.
Okay, I'm asking you on.
Yeah, well, I don't know why, but like we're saying, if it was in the St. Lawrence Seaway, if it's in Lake Ontario, it would be cleaned up, and it probably would be cleaned up if it was as close as home as the Quiddy Vitty got. But by St. John's, Erie Neck area, it's not cleaned up. Now, Paddy, maybe I should say that's not from the committee. That's from Eugene Nippert. Okay, and I want to tell you, Paddy, that I'm seeking the nomination for that district in the upcoming election.
Oh, you are? Representing what party?
For the Liberal Party.
Okay.
I've been out the past year too long fighting issues of this province. I want to be in the farmhouse where I can have something to say and more to say and accomplish more. And I'm going to be out in the district on the town hall meetings very soon as I get the green light, and hopefully I'll have that Monday or Tuesday. And I'm going to be on the ball because there's too much happening, and there's more can be done, and hopefully I'm going to be in a position to accomplish it. We
appreciate your time, and hopefully people get out to the meeting. And you know what? I'm going to take it upon myself. Shag the government, and I know the committee is busy and doing the very best they can. I'm going to search for someone who can indeed be given expert status, or as close to it as I can possibly get, to talk about the logistics of pumping it dry or floating the ship and the costs associated with it. I think if we can get that as part of the conversation, and for an appropriate description of where jurisdiction overlaps and where the distinct boundaries are between federal and provincial responsibility. We say it very easily. We say, when and if the oil makes it to the surface of the water and it touches the shore, it becomes our responsibility. I understand that that's not quite as simple as it actually is factually. So I'm going to see what I can do on this front. And I think if we add that to the conversation, we'll be a little further ahead. I got to get to the news, but I appreciate your time.
Paddy, give Paul Antle a call. He got experience in the field. He'll come on and talk to you about it.
No, I'm not going to talk to a politician about it. I want to talk to someone. Yeah, no, because I don't. That doesn't serve me.
He's not a politician. He's a contractor. He's a businessman.
You mean Paul Antle, the Liberal candidate for St. John's East?
Oh, I'm sorry. He owns a Newfoundland dockyard. Paul, I'm sorry. What's his name?
Same guy. Good man. Top quality. Extremely successful businessman. But I'm going to see if I can get someone who has the hands-on experience of having been a site supervisor, project manager, who has done a similar thing. And I respect Paul Antle a great deal, and he knows that. Yes. But I'm not going to get a politician to do it, because I think that I get politicians to speak to other things.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know he was running for a candidate.
Yeah, appreciate your time.
Okay, get some contractor, some business people that knows what needs to be done there, and get an estimate, because they cleaned it up in BC for less than 50 million, you know, and the Coast Guard sooner had that much spent.
Yeah, you might want to get to know Mr. Antle. He's the head of the nomination committee for the Liberal Party of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Well, I do know him, but I haven't been talking to him for a bit there. Yes, and yeah, okay, Patty.
Off I go. Thanks, Eugene.
Have a good one. I'll be calling you next week and give you all the info on whether I got the candidacy.
Okay, buddy.
Whether I got the nomination.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Ryan saw the phone ring a few times. We got a few calls lined up for after the news. All right, come on, folks. What's wrong with you? Pick up the phone, give us a shout. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line 7. Good morning, Wanda. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning.
I'm calling concerning about our health care.
Okay, go ahead.
The overcapacity system at the hospitals. I've been there for the past little while visiting family members, and there've been overcapacity each time I've been there.
What does overcapacity mean?
There's no place to put patients.
No beds available, or you've got...
No beds, no rooms.
People out in the hallways?
Yes, big time.
Okay.
I had a sister-in-law Sunday night taken out CCU just after coming out of a heart attack, stuck up on a floor in a hallway.
Yeah, no, it's a shocking sight to see. I unfortunately, Wanda, lived it and saw my father, who's now gone. I saw him in a hallway on a gurney and could not believe my eyes. Here we are in a province in Canada in 2014, and we've got people sitting or lying on gurneys sick out in the halls. I mean, it's shocking. And people sent home who are sick, who absolutely should be admitted to hospital, that can't get a bed. It's really quite something.
It's awful. And like I said, there's Sunday night, we went to a conversation in the waiting area up on the floor, and there's patients there 4 and 6 weeks waiting to get a heart operation.
Oh yeah. There's all kinds of people that are sitting around waiting for operations to deal with their cancer, waiting for cardiac surgery. I mean, it's just remarkable what goes on. But it doesn't mean that there's an easy answer available, which is also, hey, that's the most important part of the equation here, is what is actually available.
That's the thing. time for our government to go see those hospitals and spend some time and see what the patients and the staff, the nurses are going through too.
Yeah, but
I got upset there Sunday when they said that she was going on a floor, but they had no room. She was in the hallway. And I said, what do you mean she's going in the hallway? Ma'am, we don't have a room for her. So they're taking the heat from the family about this situation.
Which is unfair.
Which is not right. It's unfair. Yep. Because their priority should be the patients, not the family members that's complaining there. And they're stressed over the person that is in a hallway.
Yeah. Do you think that people involved with or working for the government get a better treatment than you and I and our loved ones?
No.
No, me neither. I think they live it too. And I think that politicians are well aware of the problems inside healthcare, and there's lots of them. And it's not just the amount of doctors and nurses and available beds. I think there's far deeper and not more important, but there are far deeper and more pervasive problems in healthcare than sometimes the occurrences of the capacity issue that you refer to. But I understand your point, 100%.
I was there again yesterday evening with my sister-in-law, and the emergency department is over capacity. The people are out in the hallway. You go to emerge, 99% of people are sick or there for a reason.
Well, we hope so, but, yeah.
But, when they're taking people out that are after having heart attacks and stuck out in the hall on a stretcher for 50, 55 hours, that's more stress than what it is.
Mm-hmm. I understand that point.
I don't think it should be.
No, I don't think any of us think it should be.
No.
But, when it comes to the size of a hospital so far as capacity goes, when we look at the realities facing us in the province so far as population bases in different regions, it does make it a difficult political and it makes a different political road to hoe when we talk about how do we alleviate that pressure. Because there's only one way to do it when it comes to capacity, and that is infrastructure, the building itself, the size of the clinic or the size of the hospital. I mean, if we had X number of more beds, I think we'd have no choice but to go down the road of X number of more nurses and doctors. But when we don't have space for people, I don't think it's really that easy a solution to just say, well, let's build another hospital. Because we have some regions where we don't even know what the population will be. Now, it's not, I wouldn't say that about Cornerbrook necessarily or some of the big urban centers, but it's going to be hard to accommodate the healthcare needs of people if we think that just throwing money at it is going to be the appropriate and the pragmatic way to go. No one's going to disagree with you, Wanda, because you had to live through what many of us have had to live through. Watching someone you love not being taken care of in the fashion that you think is appropriate and correct and compassionate and loving and caring. So, I mean, I'm not going to argue with you because I think you're right.
Yes. It's just sad to see, one thing is the patients are going through it. And, they're not getting the care that they should be because most of them should never be discharged when they're discharged. They're only discharged because it's over capacity.
Yeah, well, and the
family got to deal with it when it goes home, when the patient go home.
Yeah, that's true. You're absolutely right.
Right, it should never be. I think it's time if either they check into the space they have available, or what is it? What's the problem? Is there beds closed? Not enough for staff?
We have staff problems in some places, absolutely. No question. The nurses union will tell you quite clearly we have a shortage of nurses, and consequently we have nurses that are doing, and so we have shortage of nurses, we have a shortage of other staff, so that nurses who are short-staffed, working too much overtime, stressed and tired, who can't do their best work under those circumstances, they're also doing non-nursing duties, which was a big controversy when they had their last contract negotiations. So there is a huge problem in healthcare. We talked about it at the Health Summit the other day, which looked at approach, preventative medicine, those types of things. But I don't think that any of those could be satisfied if we don't have appropriate staffing. And that's everybody. Support staff, clinical staff, doctors and nurses, and everyone else inside of our healthcare system. I think you make excellent points, Juan. Anything else you want to say before we run out of time?
No, that's fine. All I would like to say, the nurses are doing a great job over there. And, they're caring. But just for them to take the feedback from the family members over this situation is not fair.
Yeah, fair enough. Good point. I can't argue with it because we all lived it. Appreciate your time this morning. I wish you and your family nothing but the best, Wanda.
Thank you, Patty. Have a good day.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. All parties will present that they have policies that will lead to efficiencies inside of healthcare. People were quick to jump down Davis' throat the other day when he said that the potential for healthcare spending could be cut, reined back in the upcoming budget. And people went, how? Why? What are you talking about? How can we possibly do that? 40% of the provincial budget is healthcare. Given the fact that the aging population is a very real circumstance we're facing in this province, if we do not come up with a way to control the spending and the cost of healthcare, what is 40% now will be 50% before too long, and we all know it's completely unmanageable. So how we achieve savings is tricky. There are models across the country that can be adopted in part or in whole to save us some money. But whoever thinks that we cannot investigate saving money in the delivery of healthcare, potential cuts in spending in healthcare, is truly living in a bubble. And I guess the only saving grace of that is that if you're living in said bubble, that you'll be safe and won't cost us any money in healthcare. We're on Twitter. We're at VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. We're taking your emails. Openline at VOCM.com. Still looking forward to you, potentially a first-time caller, to bring up an issue of concern to you, whatever turns you on, baking or otherwise. We're taking a break and then we're coming back. Welcome back to the program. Line 4. Good morning, Headley. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you, boy?
Top shelf today, by you.
No doubt. Yeah, about the same thing in the big land in Labrador, and I want to say that politics in Newfoundland and Labrador never ceases. They never ceases to amaze the electoral, no doubt. But anyway, Paddy, I'm calling from the district of Cartwright, Lands-Clare, and when you talk about seat changing in Newfoundland and Labrador, this is one district, no doubt, that can be changed. And when I say that, I talk of this district at the same time, it is, you still got a different people, different cultures. And when I talk about Lands-Clare to Red Bay, you got different people, different cultures than what you have southeastern Labrador. Because just let me say that we can be split here. We have more in common, Paddy, and I'm going to say this, and probably you might find it different coming from a so-called leader, probably in Labrador, that we have more in common with the Northern Peninsula than what we do with southeastern Labrador.
I hear that all the time.
Absolutely, we really do, and I feel that there's going to be a change here in Labrador. There's no doubt. Just let me tell you, there's only 27,000 of us here, and there's no doubt that 3 seats is enough in Labrador, and that's the way we should go. But at the same time, where we got different cultures, is going to be hard to change. But at the same time, just let me say to you, in this area here in the Straits, that we have more in common with the Northern Peninsula than what we do with Southeast. So therefore, why not take Lodge Bay and to Cartwright and put them in with Goose Bay? Leave northern parts of Labrador alone because their cultures is different again. Okay, so you got that. Okay, so you got that seat there. Put us with the Northern Peninsula. Leave Lodge Bay. Take Lodge Bay to Cartwright and put them in with Goose Bay. Leave northern Labrador alone, and then you got Labrador West. So that'll be your 3 seats there. And this is something I want to say because we do honestly have more in common with the Northern Peninsula. Just let me say to you that between Red Bay and Lodge Bay, we only have a body of water. And I just heard Jerry Byrne talking about trying to try to connect us with Labradorans. What an opportunity we have there to link us there with the province of Newfoundland. So, but there is more. There's only a body of water between us and Northern Peninsula, but there is more than a body of water between Red Bay and Lodge Bay. When it comes to culture, different way of life, different people, fishery, transportation, healthcare.
When it comes to these cultural differences, does that mean that those pockets cannot be adequately represented if there's some overlap of language, culture, heritage, background? Does that mean that they need their own distinct and their own member, and there cannot be an overlap in district, and one person couldn't adequately represent all those different features? I just asked that as a question because I don't know the answer, but I'm just wondering.
No, I don't think it can.
Okay,
no,
how so?
Because
why not?
Okay. You take for us here of here in the Straits area, okay, where we can get aboard of a vehicle. The fishery, I just use for the fishery, and I just use one species, salmon. We cannot fish a salmon here in the Straits. Okay, we're in the same district. We can go down there. If you're a different people again, just let me say that as well, right? If you're different people, you can go down there and get your salmon.
Yep.
Okay, right? Okay, so you're talking right there. Exactly, right there. But and transportation is the same thing, Patty. Is the same thing. We got it right here in the Straits area. Okay, and you heard me saying before that we're driving on pavement there that was laid in 35, 34, probably a little better. Okay, and the same thing with our transportation issues. Okay, and our health care is the very same thing again. So we got what's happening here in the Straits is the same thing. Absolutely the same thing. We got Goose Bay in there with the hospital. We got St. Anthony over there, the same thing. So it's so much that we can take care of here. But I probably can say more, but I won't. I'm not at liberty right now.
Okay, that's fine. Hedley, they're interesting points, and you're right. For me, I don't think we should reduce seats in the first place, but I think if we go down the road of reducing it by 10, if that's the number it ends up being, I don't think there's an opportunity to reduce those seats in Labrador. Now, people will say if we're using population as one of the benchmarks, then if that is how we do it and that's part of the formula, then there'd be 2 seats in Labrador, which I don't think makes any sense. I only asked you a question to hear your reaction to it, because I think you're right. There are enough distinct differences, and forget geography, there's enough distinct differences of the people that really does make for 4 seats being a very appropriate number. So I think you make very good points, and I'm really glad you made them this morning. Would you like to say anything else, sir?
No, but it's just because of the geography of Labrador. I mean, we probably would fit better probably in with Labrador City or Goose Bay than what we would with the southeastern part. And it's just the geography. But because of the geography, I feel that we have more in common with the Northern Peninsula. And I think that should be taken deeply and given every consideration when it comes to the district change. But no doubt, I want to say that again, that the district the districts in Labrador, we should be reduced to 3, no doubt.
Yeah, I don't dispute it. And even if you don't have the realignment come up the way you think it should, then we should indeed have enough common sense available to our elected members that they will recognize those facts, those points you made, and that they can work collaboratively to make sure that they represent those different needs and wants, even if it is a redrawn boundary, so that they're not fighting against each other strictly based on highway rivalry or partisan baloney, that they understand the needs of the people well enough that we go down that road and we do the right thing because you're elected to represent the people. Your first order of business should not be to accommodate your leader and to get reelected. If you can do both, by the way, and people don't realize this, many politicians, you can do both by doing the right thing. You don't always have to have this, well, I don't want anything invested there because that's not a dollar I can crow about at the Crown and Anchor table in my own district. That's what's got us in the problem, the position we are today. Hedley, really enjoyed the conversation. Glad you called.
Very good. Thank you very much.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be tricky business. Let's see. We're on Twitter. We are VOCM Mobile Line. Holy macaroni. 52 notifications during that call. What's happening here? Follow us there. Bring up your points however you see fit. We're also taking your emails, openline at VOCM.com, and today is the day to do what Mike is doing, who's waiting on line number 2. Please do indeed take a moment and give us a shout. Don't quit. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line 2. Good morning, Mike. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Pleasure.
Just wanted to call about some, safety concerns in a school zone here in Paradise. Holy Family School, actually. There's a big issue there with traffic, which I'm sure is an issue in all school zones these days. Mm-hmm. But that one in particular is familiar to me. With the morning drop-offs and afternoon pickups, a lot of traffic, of course, in the area. And unfortunately, a lot of parents not, following rules of the road, basically. We have people parking on crosswalks, people passing on a side road to get onto the school parking lot. This week alone, there's been 2 children almost hit walking to and from school. I've been after the town myself for the last year and a half, actually, since my son started school, to do something about this. They sometimes will send out an enforcement officer, but there needs to be a consistent presence there. The school has requested a crossing guard in the past. For some reason that was denied. I'm not sure why. I've asked why, but I haven't got an answer yet. But I'm just concerned that if this keeps up, somebody's going to be hurt or killed. And I think there's a very simple solution to it, to have somebody there to monitor it. They can ticket these people. They're parked on the crosswalk. or passing, I mean, something can be done about it, right?
I think you're right. So, as of now, there are no specific traffic controls set up to monitor that school zone. So, I mean, sometimes we rely on crossing guards. Like when my children went to Vanier Elementary, the woman down there, Lisa Penny, she was like a cop. I mean, you could not park in a no parking zone. You could certainly not straddle a crosswalk. She'd glare at you or flag you down if you were going too fast. But we can't rely on that. So what do you propose? That there would be police patrols slaved to, that's not the right word, police patrols who their sole role during pickup and drop-off hours at school zones would be to monitor those as opposed to do any of the other regular course of their daily schedule?
Honestly, I don't know if that's the solution, and if they had the capacity to do that. I mean, these days especially, the police have a lot on their hands. But, the town here does have enforcement officers. Yep. I don't know how many, they do have a number of them. We're looking at a half hour in the morning, half hour in the afternoon. It's not the whole day. It's the morning drop-off, the afternoon pick-up. And, I think there can certainly be some effort made to put something in place there. I was there myself this morning for 45 minutes, and I've been in touch with the town this week. They said they would have enforcement officers increase their monitoring of the area. I didn't see anybody. And 2 days in a row this week, there's almost been a child hit there, and that's just not good enough. It's not good enough. And you know what's unfortunate, Mike, and you'll agree with this? It's unfortunate that we have to have different types of patrols, whether it be municipal bylaw officers, RNC, RCMP, whoever the case may be, or maybe just concerned parents. It's remarkable we have to put that in place, as opposed to the realistic expectation of people to recognize you're in a school zone, and you have children who are in peril, and your rush to get to the store or back to work or down to Tim Hortons should never override your responsibility behind the wheel. And when you know a school zone is coming, if you're willing to park on a crosswalk, then you're a menace. If you're willing to speed through the zone, then you're an absolute disgrace. So people have to take some of their own responsibility, because we could tie up every RNC officer in the entire province ticketing people who shag around in school zones. Yeah, I agree. It's as simple as parents. And these are the people that are doing this are parents. They're dropping their kids off or picking them up. So they are parents, and they have kids going to this school. And that's who's doing this. That's who the violators are actual parents with kids at that school. So that's what I don't understand. But yes, I mean, I think me as a parent, I'm responsible for making sure I don't do things like that, and everybody else should be too. Like I said, we shouldn't have to rely on the RNC or the town or anyone else to monitor it, because people should have the common sense and the courtesy not to do this stuff. Absolutely right, because all they have to think about when you come into one of these school zones, do me and Mike a favor. Just put your child in a dangerous position because of the way you behave behind the wheel. Would you do it? Would you drive the same way if you knew full well that the next child who could be in danger or get struck and maybe killed might be yours? Right. So, I mean, that's all you have to think about when you go to behave behind the wheel. Mike, really appreciate it, and hopefully people will let it seep into their head and change how they drive around their schools. Absolutely. I appreciate your time. I appreciate yours. All the best. Take care. Bye. You too. Bye-bye. All right, let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line 5. Good morning, Mike. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning, sir.
I heard it all this morning now. We got Eugene Nibbard running for the Liberals. Between him, Merv Wiseman, and Randy Sims, boy, I think the Liberals are shooting themselves in the foot before the election. We're going to get the same thing as what we had again.
Why is that? And what's the same thing?
The same thing. Yep. What are they going to do in government? Why would we put them in government?
Those three people in particular, or what do you mean?
Those three people in particular, yes. Why would anybody put them in government and think that they can run this province?
Who are the names? So you said Randy Sims, Eugene, and who?
Merv Wiseman.
Merv is already played.
Pardon?
You go right ahead, sir. I apologize.
You got Merv Wiseman there now. Who's ever listened to Merv Wiseman other than the Open Line Show host?
A lot of people.
Comes on there. He's never ever done any good. He's never ever accomplished anything.
That's not fair, and it's not true.
That is fair, and that is true.
Merv has a long professional track record of working in the public service in a search and rescue and Coast Guard capacity.
Right. If he'd done a good job in search and rescue, he wouldn't have the knowledge about the other stuff. It was only because working with the federal government that he had the opportunity to dwell into this stuff. If you're a good person there in search and rescue and that and stuff, whatever. You're not an authority and all this other stuff.
Well, sure. I mean, I speak to all kinds of issues. There's not one that comes up here that I'm not willing to speak to and research to ensure that I know enough about it to talk about it. So nobody needs to be the master of one and then they're illiterate in every other issue. Merv seems he's a professional in agriculture.
Look, I've never known nothing. He's been on there a long time. And he brings out stuff there, too, that is not true.
Like what?
Well, one time I had an argument with him on dumping of manure and that stuff. When the minister in the government, who was Charlene Johnson at the time, came out and said that the complaints and everything were valid and all the rest of it, he came out and said that it was a personal issue.
You're making it sound personal.
Pardon?
You're making it sound personal between you and Merv.
Oh, it is now.
Okay. All right, very good.
Yes, it is personal.
All right.
Because I know the man now from a different point of view, not only just listening to him on the radio.
Okay.
And on the open line show host. And like I said, he's been on there, yes, but I've never ever heard anybody from the governments, from the mainland or whatever, from Ottawa. I've never ever heard anybody respond to him or have he ever accomplished anything. He's on there talking about it, but, people just don't pay attention to him.
Well, I mean, some do, some don't. Some of that might be a result of, and I think Merv would understand this, sometimes if you're on too much or too often, that people will indeed tune out your message. And there's right and wrong associated with that. So that's fair enough. I do think that Merv is a in-tune person. He's on the policy committee for the Liberal Party. He's got a long track record of involvement as a professional and as a political participant of some variety. So, I mean, okay. So what's wrong with Randy Sims?
Randy Sims, ignorant and arrogant. And Randy Sims gets something in his craw. He's not going to give it up. You're not going to talk him out of it. And he gets these foolish ideas sometimes, and you just no way of dealing with the man. And what he thinks...
Yeah, I shouldn't be defending either one of them, because whatever you think is what you think.
I expect you to defend him.
What?
I was well expecting you to defend them.
I don't think it's not my place to defend people and their personal track record. But Randy, once again, has been involved in the public eye on a variety of issues, including a decade as a fantastic host of this program. And, keeps getting his post back in the city of Mount Pearl as the mayor. Randy has a lot of fans. I'm sure he has a lot of detractors, but that comes by and large with being in the public eye. So, okay. And Eugene, people love to condemn Eugene because of the Moose vehicle stuff. But once again, he's only doing what he thinks is right. He's only doing what he thinks can help protect other motorists. So he's not trying to screw anybody, right?
Oh, no, his heart is probably in the right places. I got no doubt about that.
Yep.
As regards to heart-wise or thinking that he's believing he's right, yes. But I just don't think that the man got the capabilities of being into government the way that he is, the way that he comes across. A lot of stuff that he's getting on with the Moose vehicle accidents and all the rest of it is pure garbage. And like I said, most of it is to educate the people as regards to driving. If they're going out there driving mad, the highways now are cramped. The Moose got a job to cross the road without a car seeing it or hitting it. And if the drivers are not aware of it, but just putting up fences and all the rest of it with all this money going to spend on this stuff, where it's up to the individual of how he conducts himself driving. And we're going to take money away from our health care and all the rest of it to put up all these fences and stuff on the highway. Like, we're not in the financial situations and that deal with the issues that he's bringing up. And I don't think that he's capable of, say, a job in the government.
Well, I guess the people will indeed have their opportunity. If he's successful in securing a nomination, people will gauge for themselves wherever he's running as to whether or not he's the right person for the job. But in your opinion, is this worth as much as everybody else's opinion, and absolutely including mine?
Well, so, as far as I'm concerned, in the last election, I talked to a lot of people in the last election. You said, look, we voted PC. Why you vote PC? Well, look at who else I had to vote for. And they voted PC, basically, because Liberals never had anybody. And now they're doing it again. And if we fall with these people into government, I mean to say, as far as I'm concerned, we're doomed. And it's not right as far as I'm concerned. Like I said, here, we've got a notion here. But I'd like to see in government, I'd like to see a teacher. I'd like to see somebody from the law enforcement. I'd like to see somebody with different engineering degrees. I'd like to see business degrees. I'd like to see accountants. I'd like to see a wide variety of different people in there, of different classes in our society. But we're not getting it. And a lot of what we're getting is a bunch of people that can shoot their mouth off, yes. But as regards to making common sense and being able to do the job, no, I don't think they got the capabilities of doing the job. I don't think that there's any retired cop out there who's worked for the last 30 years and being a good cop qualifies as leader of this province.
Why not? Once again, what does that have to do with anything? So just because you're a retired businessman?
No, it does not necessarily.
Retired lawyer?
No, well, it could be anything, but like I said, there's a lot of different classes of people out there that could fill the job, but they've got to have a lot of good people underneath them.
That's the trick.
And if you got...
Excellent point, Mike. It's an excellent point, because I think way too often we misunderstand how this works in the first place. You can indeed, like people say, well, you got to be a doctor or someone in the healthcare profession to be the Minister of Health. The Minister of Health is still a political position. The key is whether or not you have experienced, intelligent, forthright deputy ministers and staff under them, so that all the input that you can possibly compile, feedback from all sides, helps form legitimate political decisions. That's why you don't have to be a doctor to be the Minister of Health. You don't have to be a lawyer to be the Minister of Justice and do it effectively. You just have to have a open mind with a good track record of life experience that allows you to make good decisions. That's how this works. That's my opinion anyway.
Right, yes, and I agree with you, but you also got to have the knowledge and the respect of those deputy ministers and ministers and everything below you, the directors and all the rest of it into the government. If you don't have that, and they're there, you're there like a puppet being pushed around, you take health care there. What they did there in the management decisions, they brought in, they forced the managers and them to cut and cut and cut. After they got it cut, then they brought in a separate contractor from the mainland, based over in Europe, to run the health care. Then they gives them money and everything to do it. After the Newfoundlanders does the cut jobs, reduces everything, gets the bad name for doing it all, then they lays them off, puts these other people in charge to make them look good, to make the people at the top of the government look good.
Yeah, but that's their job. You're supposed to make people look good with your information and your professionalism to give me the bare bones and the details and the things I need to know to make good decisions. If people who are working for ex-minister, if it's all about, you know, I don't like this person, I don't think I respect this person, so I'm not going to do my job properly, we should fire that person. Because your job is to do the best you can to satisfy your paycheck every second Friday and to best supply your minister, regardless of political stripe, with the information required to do a good job. And if you're not willing to do that, then get lost.
Well, look, as far as I'm concerned in healthcare, back when they laid off all the managers and made the cuts and brought in this new bunch of managers and that and whatever, a separate company that we're paying for and paying dearly for, and no savings, we should have started at the top and laid them off. We should have said, look, these people here at the top, well, we can't do the cuts. We can't make the decisions to get this down. We've got to bring in somebody else to do it. If we had a minister there that was capable of making the decision and said, no, boy, I'm going to start at you fellas first. If you fellas can't do your jobs and direct the people underneath you, then you should go. Not start at the bottom, at the person that's sweeping the floor or mopping the floors, or clean the arses, or clean the noses of the people in beds. When you start cutting those people down there first, and then you still got the management who made all of these decisions, do all these cuts and everything, are still there and protecting themselves, and then trying
to cut some managers, though. They did cut managers.
Yeah, but they brought in more.
Well, no, they're down in the numbers of managers. Senior and mid-management is indeed lower now. Look, I don't think you're that far off base, and I do appreciate everything that you've said this morning, and I've enjoyed the call. I do have to take a break simply because of the time on the clock, but you call again whenever you like.
Good enough.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Did I get your blood going?
Absolutely. Listen, I win. And it's not win the conversation. Winding me up makes me feel better.
Maybe I got some other people wound up too.
I don't doubt it. Thanks, Mike.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Line number 1. Good morning, Jane. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. You sound terrible today.
You know what? I sounded terrible Monday and Tuesday as well. This morning when I woke up, I thought I was recovered enough, but obviously it's vacating me again now.
You poor thing. I want to address your 2 callers ago, Mike, regarding Paradise and the safety on the school parking lot.
Yeah.
I don't know if you recall, but I've been rallying for years about school board safety, school parking lot safety, and I was a crossing guard for 4 years, and I tried to, get the city, the police, and the school board together to better the safety on parking lots. And, of course, I didn't get anywhere. But I just want to let the caller know that if he took a picture of the vehicle, you have to take the photo on 2 angles. You have to take it from the rear to get the license plate number, and you have to take it from the driver's side angle to show that there's nobody in the vehicle. Because if he were to report this, the first thing they would say, the motorist may say, is, hey, I was sat in the car, I wasn't parked. So you have to show that the vehicle is empty. And again, you have to record the time of day, the date, and the make of the vehicle. And you can report this to the city, and you can also report it to the RNC, and a ticket will be issued. So anybody out there, if you see anybody violating on the school parking lot, like I said, take a photo and record the information, and a ticket will be issued. And another thing a lot of motorists don't realize is that school parking lots are under the jurisdiction of the Department of Highways. So if you see a vehicle passing a school bus with the stop arm out, they can lose 6 points off their driver's license, demerit system, for passing a school bus. And that is on a school parking lot. That's not just on the highway, on the roadways.
Yeah, people talk about the need for a camera on the buses to bring that kind of evidence to traffic court to make sure those tickets happen. So once again, the approach, if I want to take a personal photograph of any of these offenders, whether it be crosswalk or otherwise, in a school zone, it sounds very similar to how we try to approach catching people in disability zones. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
You can do the same thing, Again, like I said, the parking lots, whether it's Walmart, whether it's any parking lot, is under the jurisdiction of the Department of Highways. You have to follow the same rules. And that's like parking on a crosswalk. If you see that, again, take a photo and everything. And now the only thing is, you have to physically go to the RNC and file a complaint.
Right.
You may get called into court. So if the motorist disputes it, then you may have to make a second trip. And I know just from experience of reporting motorists that I had gone to court 3 times for the one offense. One time it was thrown out. Another time, it was recessed for some reason. So if you're going to do that, be prepared. You may spend some time down in traffic court.
Yeah, and you know what, but if you care so much that you're willing to get out of the car and take the pictures and go down and present them to the RNC, then we assume you're willing to follow up, because that is one of the tried and true, we hope, deterrents of that person doing it again, and they tell their friend, like, God, this busybody over at school took pictures of my car, then they'll think twice if they go to do the same thing.
Well, that's basically what happened with me. I was, I wasn't well liked by many parents, let me tell you, but once word got around, hey, listen, that crossing guard is not joking around. She's going to report you. The safety was 100%. But it's hard to catch one person. But if you get the same person violating the rules over and over and over, the same vehicle, it might be worth your while to report it. And the RNC, they're very, very accommodating. Now, with this gentleman, Mike, who called in, of course, Paradise is not under the city, so he would probably have to go to the RNC. But, you see crossing guards out there, and many of them are trained, but many of them are not. And they get out there, with a vest and a stop sign, and they're not trained. And a lot of people don't realize that the city will offer you free crossing guard training. All you have to do is just call down there and say, listen, I have a parent or a teacher willing to man the crosswalk. Can you train them in? And they're very anxious to do this. So, if there's any principals or vice principals or anybody out there listening who, would like to avail of this, just contact the city, because they're doing their best to make the parking lot safe as well. So, I just want to let you know that, if you see this continuing, just take a photo and go down and report it. And and it's not very rarely. There was only one occasion of dozens of occasions where, it was my word against the violator. But oftentimes, the way the RNC looks at it is, if you're taking the time to fill out a report and going down there and doing it in person, then, you're serious. You're not going to just do this for a hoot just to get somebody in trouble. I mean, they take you pretty seriously down there, so.
Well, it's good information to pass on. Many people feel helpless when they see that, to know that there is an avenue, that you can see that there's a ticket delivered, and that it may indeed stop others from doing the same thing. I think it was a really worthwhile message brought forward. Anything else quickly before I go to the news, Jane?
No, just don't let the motorists get away with it, because if something should happen, God forbid, first thing you're going to say is, darn, I should have reported that guy.
Yeah, that's right.
So, if they're parked on the crosswalk, if they're parked up on the curb, especially if they pass a school bus, that's probably the biggest violation. A lot of people don't realize that you lose 6 points. So not only the safety factor, but, you may lose your license as well.
Yes, and we all know that unless you're rushing to the hospital, you're not going anywhere important enough to pass a school bus. Jane, really enjoyed the information and the call. Thanks for this.
Okay, have a good one.
You
Take
too.
care and get well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I don't feel too bad. It's just my damn voice. But that's it. I'm going to hang in there, and you can play an active role if you really care about my well-being. Give us a call. We're taking a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the Liberal candidate for the Long Range Mountains. Of course, the federal riding of the Long Range Mountains, Mark Watton. Good morning, Mark. You're on the air.
Morning, Patty. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, man. You?
I'm hanging in there too. Just got back from a lengthy trip up to the northernmost reaches of the riding I'm running in, Long Range Mountains. Spent a good couple of days in the St. Anthony area, St. Lanier, Griquet, and back down through Port Saunders and Port au Choix. Met a lot of great people. I can tell you, I mean, the news of the Premier's latest announcement didn't really hit until I was somewhere just south of Daniels Harbor, but I don't remember anyone I ran into complaining that they were overrepresented in the House of Assembly.
No, and I don't think there's anyone who actually feels that way. They just want to. I think the overriding thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, is people just seem to have that sentiment of shag politicians, and less of them is better until they're asked, do you think you're overrepresented? And then they will say, no, I'm not.
Yeah, and I think I've been listening to your show on and off this morning and following some of the comments on Twitter, and I won't focus too much on this because I have something else I really want to talk about.
Go ahead.
But the one thing I would say is, in the question of the day and in the newscast just now, they talk about it as the Premier's decision. And when you take a step back and just think of the wording of that, and you say, how did such a vital and significant change to the way we're democratically represented become the Premier's decision? I mean, you hear about that in other countries, not in a democracy like ours. I tend to believe that there is some validity to the claim that there may be too many seats in the House, because we have had a shrinking population persistently for the last decade or 2 decades. So it's quite logical, just as the Canadian House of Commons has grown to reflect growth in the population, that ours might shrink to reflect shrinkage. But a word of caution about that. I mean, you mentioned, there was also mentioned in the news about the legislation having to be changed to get away from the 10-year cycle. There's a reason for the 10-year cycle. The 10-year cycle is to coincide, number one, with census data as it becomes available, and number two, I believe it's there so that the timing is set, so that political parties and governments don't alter the timing to suit their own needs and their own agenda. And the last time that...
But, Mark, on that point, the timing could have overlapped by a variety of reasons, couldn't it? I mean, if 2016 was set, which it is, there's nothing to say that 10 years that from the 1996 review, that 2016 couldn't have also been an election year, so there's not much we can do about that.
No, but I think the reason why you try to adhere to the time limits is to try to give some clarity and neutrality to the process in the eyes of the public. You may recall that the last time this came up, the recommendation was to reduce the number of seats, and at the time the government of the day, and I believe it may have been a Liberal government, but it was seen to be as politically divisive and damaging to reduce the number of seats, and so because they were afraid of the consequences, they didn't do it. Now I think this government kind of embraces the consequences. They want to save money. They probably have a different political agenda going into the future in terms of their own standing in the polls. Yeah. But this is why I think that these types of things have to be beyond politics and beyond governments of the day, politicians of the day. And you look at the Boundaries Commission, I mean, the decision to reduce it is already made. It's just a map drawing exercise from here on in, and the representatives on that commission are named by the political parties. Who represents the rest of us? I mean, I happen to be a partisan. You know I'm very involved in political activity. I've been involved in the party for a long time. But the majority of the population aren't, and they deserve a voice too, and I just don't think their concerns are going to be represented in this process, and I'm very concerned about it. It may very well be that a smaller legislature is in order for this province, but let's have an open and thorough conversation about it. The other thing I just want to mention
quickly on that point, then I'll let you move on to whatever issue you choose to bring up. How would it be different if it was brought up after the next election, when and if the Liberals are successful, and so that Premier Ball would bring forward his already well-documented statement of a reduction of 8? How does anything change based on who's in charge and when it's brought forward?
I don't think it should be either his or Premier Davis's. My point is, it's not the Premier's decision to make here, I don't believe. It's the Premier's perhaps power to take a recommendation from a truly independent commission who does a thorough examination of it. Jerry Byrne was on earlier today talking with the Nunavut example, and I think there's some very good points he raised about, the learned experts and the legal research and all this kind of. Where is the venue for that in this decision? I mean, this is not reducing the seats by 1 or 2 or 3. This is 10. This is almost a quarter of the legislature being, snap your fingers gone. I think it warrants significant discussion, but I also think there are far, far more important reforms, some of them cost-saving reforms, that the legislature should be looking at that have been discussed for years, which no one has done anything on, which would A, save more money, and B, be a lot more democratic, and nobody seems to want to talk about them, right? There's absolutely, if all the parties are talking about changing the MHA pension plan, there's no reason they can't put that in the House right now and fix that, if that's what one of the cost drivers is. I mean, I think people in this province, the idea that we reduce by 10 the number of seats to save money, which is the only justification I just heard from Premier Davis in that clip. If this Premier can cut 10 seats to save money, what's to stop the next Premier from cutting 20 seats to save even more money? I mean, as ridiculous as that might sound, that's why you need to have legislated timelines and truly thorough and independent review or a commission-type study to deal with this kind of stuff.
I don't dispute that one iota. Let's elaborate just a little tiny bit. So, if indeed the Liberals brought it forward and there was a process in place that people thought was more conducive to public consultation and adherence to democracy, and the recommendation was made by a commission as opposed to a leader of a political party as a number of seats, that is still would be left to the hands of the House of Assembly,
yes.
And then the leader of whatever party that holds a seat of government would make a decision based on whether or not it was conducive to them. So we would, at some point, we would be installing window dressing measures that will really have very little influence if indeed it will come down to the role of the House of Assembly to determine the number of seats.
True. I don't believe it's window dressing when you say it's not the Premier's place to instigate this.
No.
You said in legislation, or electoral law is often viewed as quasi-constitutional because of the nature of it. You set in place, as we already have with the 10-year timeline and the mandatory review of the boundaries and stuff, basically whether it's the chair of the CEO of Elections Newfoundland and Labrador or some other figure through the left, but an independent report that comes to the legislature, not to the Premier, not to the executive, not to the minister of the cabinet, but to the legislature. And there at the legislature again is debated in things like standing committees, which we still do not have in this province. And that's where you bring in experts and lawyers and opinion leaders and community leaders who can come in and give their views on these things and hopefully modify bills, change bills until someone, you're right, ultimately it's only the legislature that has the power to make the final decision. But all the steps that lead up to that final decision shouldn't be Premier Davis and Stephen Kent standing on a microphone saying, here's how it's going to be, we'll vote on this in a few months. Because that's what it is right now.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and I think that's fair characterization. And I do think if there's a majority position held inside the government after the next election, that it would still boil down to whether or not that political party sought to be reflective of their personal political fortunes as much as anything else. And that's not cynical. I think that's just the reality of political parties and the role they play when they hold majority positions in governments.
Yeah.
And you talk about committees, Mark. I think we reduced the potential for these all-party committees with reducing seats. I don't think there's a benefit other than this $2.5 paltry savings, $2.5 million paltry savings. I don't think there's a benefit to the representation that people will be afforded by reducing the seats. I simply don't.
I agree. I mean, we could save $100 million by getting rid of the House and going back to Commission of Government, but I don't think anybody wants that. But that's the ridiculousness of using the cost figure as a justification for this. There are justifications for this. The shrinking population is one of them. But again, I think that the motivation and the process behind this deserves a little bit more of a doesn't quite pass the sniff test the way I think it would if they followed the act to the letter, and if they opened up the commission process to involve more than just political parties. That's almost the last thing I'll say on that, except another point that Jerry made, which I think I have to say I disagree with, was when he said, we're going into a period of economic uncertainty and we have to be united. That's sort of a throwaway that politicians in the province have said for years, but I disagree fundamentally. When we're going through difficult times, we have to be divided. There have to be diverse opinions. There have to be differing viewpoints. There has to be debate. And if it's not happening in the House, and if there's fewer members there to make it, and there aren't the standing committees like you and I just discussed to have those discussions, then I don't think we're better served by everybody being on the same page and saying, oh, well, all the three parties agree with this, let's go ahead and do it because it must be good. Because we've seen that happen before. The last set of changes to the Elections Act, that's how it happened, and it turned out to be a crock. The Abitibi expropriation, that's how it happened, and 2 hours later we have absorbed millions of dollars in debt by accident. When all three parties agree on something, there's usually something wrong.
I think that's an excellent summary point. Mark, you said you wanted to discuss something else as well.
That's not what I called him to talk about. I wanted to call and talk about another democratic process. I am running as a candidate for the federal nomination in the riding of Long Range Mountains, spending a fair bit of time on the road and on the phone. I just want to remind people that this nomination will likely be called in the very near future. We don't know if a federal election will be called. Again, we have fixed election dates for the fall, but we're still speculating whether they have one in the spring or summer or some other time. Yeah. So it could happen at any moment. I've had a great response in the communities I've been able to visit. I look forward to visiting more communities and meeting more people, but I just want to say to people that if you want to help my campaign or get involved, you can visit my website at markwatton.ca. The most important thing you can do is take out a membership in the federal Liberal Party, which is different from the provincial Liberal Party. It's a different process. You can go to liberal.ca/membership to register as a member. Only members are entitled to vote. We're still waiting word on when the vote will be or how it will be held, but I'm advocating for a process that includes more than just the big centers, but that everyone that is registered has a means of voting, and I think there's a sympathetic ear for that. I think that's going to happen. And, time is of the essence. I'd really love to have your support. You can read more about me at markwatton.ca, and I hope to be in. If I haven't been in your community yet, I'll be back there soon, I hope.
Well, we certainly appreciate your time and your points you made about seat reduction and what have you, and good luck on the campaign trail.
Thanks very much.
Thanks,
have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Mark Watton wants to be the Liberal Member of Parliament for the Long Range Mountains. One more break, and then we're coming back. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's wrap up the program. Line 3. Good morning, John. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you today?
Excellent, by you.
Good.
Good.
Other than the snow.
Yeah, I don't mind a bit of snow.
What I was going to call about was the new boundaries that they're looking at for the election boundaries. But when I heard people talking about school buses, I decided to change my topic.
Okay.
Up in Nova Scotia, several years back now, like probably at least 10 years, there was an incident where an emergency vehicle with warning equipment all operating and everything, and passed the school bus, and the school bus lights were on, and when it got back to the Department of Motor Vehicles, they actually sent an instructor out to every fire department in the province so that they could explain the whys and the how fors and the how comes and all that stuff. And from what I understand, the ticket was squashed, but everybody had to take training if you were driving a fire engine or any kind of an emergency vehicle.
Yeah. All right.
No, I'm just saying, maybe something that the transportation department down this way could look at. I know it's not 99.9% of it is not emergency vehicles passing. It's just some idiot in a car on the way to nowhere.
Oh, absolutely. It is just some moron speeding around. That's right.
Yeah. So, no, just that I figured that I just mentioned that because, where it was in Nova Scotia, people probably never heard about it. But you will get, you lose, I'm not sure how many points it is, but if it's not enough to take your license on you, it's probably 1 point before. So if you get caught doing anything at all illegal on the road, that 1 point will drive you over the limit.
Yeah, I think it's 6 points. That's what Jane told us earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's all I got to say, Patty.
Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah, okay.
Appreciate it. All the best. Have a good weekend.
You too, boy.
Okay, man. Bye-bye. All right, I'm not going to take another call, am I, Ryan? Do we have enough time? No, I don't think we do. Ask Philip to please call again on Monday morning. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. And my friend Todd Barron, he chimes in. He just turned on the show. I don't know where he's been the whole show. He should be listening every minute. He says, just tuned into the show. Is that Kathleen Turner guest hosting? To which Daniel McEachern, friend and colleague at the Telegram, says, please don't ruin anyone else. So, gentlemen, allow me to poison your minds for the rest of the weekend. Michelle Pfeiffer, Lauren Bacall, call me who you like. Picture me as you see fit. And then Cochran, sauciest person, probably in Newfoundland, Labrador. He says I sound like Howard's mom from Big Bang Theory. Beat it, Cochran. Hope you all have yourself a great weekend. Portland Pirates in action down at the Mile 1 Center. Big victory Wednesday night. Couple of victories yet to come, hopefully, for our lads this weekend. Pete Soucy, he'll be here this afternoon with another edition of Back Talk. And then the Friday Night Sex Show. Dr. Sarah McCauley and maybe my raspy voice will make a guest appearance. Until then, you have yourself a safe, fun, happy weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. Bye-bye.